Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. So today we are going to talk about She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. First of all, I would like to apologize as I am about to butcher many Chinese names and Mongolian names. If you know how they're actually pronounced, feel free to correct me in the comments. This novel has been in my TBR list for quite some time, and it is only now that I decided to pick it up because of Chinese New Year, and I think it fits the occasion. And I just happened to be in the mood for a Chinese historical epic. And let me tell you, I was not disappointed at all. I always have a thing for historical fiction, whether it's in books or in dramas. I think that those are like the best window to the past that we ever had. I am a firm believer that those who do not learn from history are condemned to repeat it. Some of my favorite K-dramas and C-dramas are historical, like Goodbye My Princess, Scarlet Heart, Mr. Sunshine, and The Princess Man. And if you haven't watched Mr. Sunshine, go ahead. For Chinese dramas, I'm actually more keen into the historical ones than the modern contemporary romances. I like the costumes, okay? For a while, I was actually obsessed with Goodbye My Princess because it has one of the best balance of romance and politics. There wasn't too much romance to the point where it makes the story cringy, and there wasn't too much politics that makes the story boring. So it was like the perfect blend along with fascinating characters. On a side note, do check out my fan bits in my first channel, link in the description below. Rise of the Phoenixes is also a good example on how to make a very sophisticated and intricate politics drama. And you have the two characters in the story that are absolutely intelligent and crafty, that you can actually respect and believe the amount of scheming that they've done. It is so cool. And if you haven't watched it, you should. They're amazing. The beauty of historical fiction for me is how it enables us to live into something that is further from us than space. I mean, come on, you cannot turn back time, right? Time is something further to us than the stars. Yes, none of those people are still alive, and we will never know what they're actually like. We only know them through textbooks and articles. And the historical dramas like this that makes those people feel like flesh and bone and emotions and personality, and I really respect writers who do that, which is the reason why She Who Became the Sun is very fascinating to me. It's a queer retelling of Emperor Hongwu rise to power, from a young child surviving famine to a monk to a general leading the rebellion of the Red Turban, which is also based on actual history, overthrowing the Mongol rule, and finally an emperor. He is also the one that started the Ming Dynasty. The review says that the story has a fantasy element, but for me it is more towards supernatural than fantasy. It's not so much enough, it's not too fantasy to the point where it's high fantasy, but it's let's just say that the fantasy adds a level of, is it magical realism? I'm not sure. But anyway, yeah, there was a little bit of magic in here. One of the best reviews that I saw that encapsulates what the story is really about is when someone says it's Mulan meets Song of Achilles. And if you know both stories, then this review definitely paints a clear picture on what the book is about. But I haven't actually read the Song of Achilles, so I only saw the synopsis. But I'd say that once I read that, I actually got a clear idea. I think after this, I might actually want to check out the Song of Achilles. So what is the story about, alright? So it's set in the 14th century. We mainly follow an unnamed daughter of the family Zhu, who after the death of her family and surviving famine during ancient China, took on her brother's name, Chu Chongba. Sorry if I butchered that. And lived as a boy since then. The story entails her journey and the growing desire of power in a world dominated by men. The story is based on real historical figures, and this alternate history explores themes like politics, ethics, and gender. Shelley Parker Chan nailed it so well, and this is even more impressive since this book is actually her debut. It's her debut, and she's doing so good, and I'm so impressed. And by the way, this is the first book in the Radiant Emperor duology. I can't wait. I just really can't wait for the second book to come out, and I expect it to be just as great, if not more. Since this is based on an actual emperor, the actual emperor is a man, and that this is a queer retelling, like I mentioned. Now, the story of a woman disguising as a man is actually kind of a staple in a lot of Asian dramas, but if you're thinking that the stories are gonna get cute and fluffy like in Mulan, the good Mulan, not the bad one, because I refuse to acknowledge that existed, or even like in a lot of other of those C-dramas and K-dramas, rest assured there's nothing cute about this story. In fact, the story is all darkness, war, murder, and bloody. So if you're turned off by that, then this might not be a story for you. For convenience, I'm going to call our character as Chu Chongba, since that's the name she took on, even though it's actually her brother's name. From the beginning of the story, she experienced unfair treatment from her father and brother, and just how much a girl in the family is not a blessing, but a liability. The first few pages already breaks my heart, especially since she's only a child at that time. It actually reminds me of that one part in Jing Jing Li, how it disappeared. I won't tell you about that part. It was so heartbreaking and it was so real that I actually threw the book across the room. That's how stressed I was while reading the book, by the way. And the beginning of the story really paints the reality of women back in the day and how they're ignored, especially from childhood, after her father took both her brother and her to see a fortune teller, and the fortune teller says that her brother's name carries this really big destiny. And when the fortune teller took a look into her name, he found nothing. One of her inner conflicts is her struggle with her identity, since she essentially have stolen her brother's name and her brother's identity, her brother's fate. Now let's get to how the characters and the theme interact with each other. One of the main themes of the novel is gender identity, and how it's not something that remains constant within us, but it is prone to change at even the slightest touch. And sometimes we might not even realize it. Have you ever you haven't seen someone for a long time, and then all of a sudden you feel the same, but then when they meet you again, they say, oh my god, you've changed so much. You didn't even realize it. The story itself also contains a very strong message on how we are in charge of our own fate, and that if we believe in something strong enough, nothing is impossible. Even though Chu Chongba also displays that, there's also another character that displays just as much conflict as her, and it provides like a variety of spectrum to the story. A subplot follows General Ouyang, whose path crossed with Chu Chongba when he destroyed the monastery that she was in, and sparking revenge and desire for better things. General Ouyang is actually Chinese born, but during the Mongol invasion, his family was killed. The Prince of Henan, a Mongol, took him in as like the companion of the prince's son, Lord Essen. His story, General Ouyang's story, also deals with gender identity, much like Chu Chongba. But for me, I personally think I like General Ouyang's storyline more. His journey and inner conflict felt more interesting to me. Not that Chu Chongba's story is not interesting. Ouyang is a person that grapples with insecurity and trying to establish his sense of self in a world that constantly doubts him. Chu Chongba is detached from her feminine side because of convenience, but Ouyang is stripped of his masculinity after he was castrated and became a eunuch. The physical description that he has in this book is flesh of ice and bones of jade. It is to emphasize his unearthly beauty, and that it definitely strikes something inside of Chu. Here's this man, a castrated man, that has like this level of beauty that is like a woman. That is how a woman should be. And maybe, just maybe, hear me out, this might be my boring heterosexual self-talking, but I actually kind of ship Chu Chongba and Ouyang. Feel free to disagree with me on this one, but there's a fanfic material somewhere between these two. And their dynamic is so intense, like sparked by revenge, fueled by ambition and envy, and just low-key admiration to each other's strengths. And like, this is like classic enemies to lovers trope. This is fanfic material. I'll let you know that. Writers of AO3, Wattpad, please. These two characters are foils for each other, and their journey and inner conflicts have their own parallels. Plus, it's interesting because Chu sees Oh Young as this as someone who is so similar to her already, since both of them are very, they're very liminal in their sexuality, and they're also struggling with gender identity, and especially with the people around them that is like constantly doubting their capability because they are not normal. Like, Oh Young is not like a normal man, and well, with Ju, she is definitely not like a normal woman. She is essentially an outsider managing to infiltrate in a male space. Much like Chu Jongba, Oh Young was not spared of ill treatment, not only because he was Chinese born, but also because he's a eunuch. He was castrated. He's no longer a full man in a physical sense. Oh Young is a second-class citizen amongst his people, among his own family. Some of the books out there, they make female empowerment story, and then the easiest way for them to do it is to put down men. This book, by giving Oh Young the story he deserves and the characterization that he has, essentially just puts that not all men are like this. Sure, Oh Young has his moments where he's kind of a bit of a, how can I say this? He doesn't like women, but you can totally understand where he's coming from, and that men are not above, abusing other men. Like, men also are abused by other men, women are abused by men too, but some men are also being abused by other men. Despite all of the achievement that Oh Young has gained through his life, I mean his accomplishments as a general and everything, people still consider him less. And that can easily make a person really feel like shit. Because back then, the idea of a man is not by his personality, it's not by his intelligence or by his kindness. It's whether you can fight or whether you have your thing-a-ding-ding. Plus the way that other men and other women are looking at him, calling him beautiful, it further emasculates him. It further makes him feel inadequate. Like, people don't take him seriously. He's envious of his companion, the son of Prince of Henan, Lord Essen. Lord Essen lived a life that he could have had if only the Mongols never came, if only he was never castrated. He would have had a full life with a wife and a family and stuff, and that people won't look down on him. The dynamic was interesting, definitely, since Oh Young lost a physical part of himself, causing the fear of women in general. Now, Oh Young's resentment towards Ju is because she was the one that made him lost the battle. Because of that loss, he is also further humiliated by the Prince of Henan and his people. And he is just someone who is willing to risk it all, everything that he had, just simply to get even. He even pulled a Skywalker on her. Like, seriously, he did. Oh Young had no idea that Ju is actually a woman, but I believe that part of his subconscious hates her because the fact that she's a woman and that woman beats him at something that he's good of. He's a notorious general, and that the fact that he's beaten by a simple monk at that, I just imagine if Oh Young knows that Ju is a woman, he is going to lose his shit. Anyway, just to emphasize, I love this juxtaposition between Oh Young and Ju on their gender identity, on their ambition and their desire. I love it. Ju is someone who is confident, so she ended up marrying Ma Zhuoying, which is also the empress from real history. Whereas Oh Young is someone who is massively struggles with his sexuality. He is torn between love and hate towards Lord Essen, because at the same time he's attracted to him, but then he also resents him and his family. He resents him for constantly putting him down without him realizing it, because Lord Essen was constantly talks in this place of privilege without realizing how much it hurts Ouyang. But at the same time, Lord Essen is also the person that is closest to him in that household, the person that constantly defended him. Ouyang is my favorite character because he is someone who is broken both physically and emotionally, just so badly broken. On one hand, he loved Lord Essen, and he knew Lord Essen loved him too. I mean, like, the man actually tried to make a move on him, but it is in his inability to move on from the past and to stuck between this love, hate, and the inability to express both towards Lord Essen that he ended up driving people away. All of the characters in the story have their own complexity. None of them are truly good people, not even Ma Choying, although Ma Choying started off as probably the most innocent character. I see Ma's character as someone that Ju could have become had her family survived. She might just be as kind as Ma, but at the same time she'll also be a pushover, and ended up being oppressed as the book oppressed Ma Choying with her life and with her ex-fiance and everything, who disrespects her and treats her like a servant. In a sense, Ouyang actually feels a lot more human to me than Chu Jongba because of his flaws, because of that struggle that he had. Chu Jongba seems to have a clearer sense of direction, and she knows what she wants, which makes her really cool and admirable. But her coolness can feel a little bit too otherworldly, and I'll explain why later. As someone who is constantly a chaotic mess, I just can't believe that. My other favorite character is actually Wang Baoxiang. So that is Lord Essen's adopted brother. He is portrayed as a scholar and handled the finances of the family and the military. Now, in present day, we all have this understanding that war requires money. But the prince of Henan's family don't understand that. And like Ouyang, Lord Wang is also considered as a second-class citizen, even though he is of higher status than Ouyang. But even Ouyang, I think Ouyang is actually better treated than Lord Wang, because Ouyang is eventually, even though he's a eunuch, he's in the military. But Lord Wang prefers to do admin work, and they consider his job being not as important as being a soldier, and that he is not a real man for choosing the administrative role. And I'm like, when in reality, it is men like Wang Baoxiang that is also very important, because we need him to ensure the family's longevity. He manages the finance, he ensured the soldiers are paid well, and the roads are paved, and the household is managed. Because without him managing those things, his work-crazed brother and father will end up run the family down to bankruptcy or lose their men's loyalty, because they think soldiers, they are fueled on admiration and loyalty instead of a life of security. The amount of research that Shelley Parker Chan has done for the story is amazing, and along with the writing style, it really does add to the richness of the story. And since the Chinese language is filled with metaphors and hyperbole, especially if you watch a lot of historical C-dramas, then you can tell. But there's this one article that really explains some of the references that Shelley Parker Chan did in her book, and it's really interesting, and it adds a lot more layer and depth of understanding. So I'll leave the link in the description if you wish to check them out. Now, the ends does not justify the means. When it comes to ancient China, for all the characters here, it's a total opposite, especially when power is at stake. Now, because the story is set during an interregnum. So an interregnum is a time during leadership is unclear or in flux. So historically, Shelley Parker Chan uses the rise of the Red Turban Rebellion that marks the end of the Mongolian rule and the rise of Emperor Hongwu and also the Ming Dynasty. Which brings us to the concept of Mandate of Heaven, or Tianming. So Tianming is the core philosophy in ancient China that legitimizes the right to rule and the chosen one who possesses the mandate, i.e. the emperor, which is called also the Son of Heaven. Now, in that time where people and the citizens are under very strong religious belief, that belief is easily molded and used as a tool of manipulation The real concept of the mandate is never something that is like literal. It is more of an abstract concept. Yes, there are supernatural and religious elements involved, but not as quite literally. Back then, we have this belief that each element has their own guardian, and the one who is holding them together is the emperor. If a drought happens and then there's a famine, the emperor would be considered the one at fault, because that it will be counted as he's losing the mandate. Although we all know that not even the emperor can win against Mother Nature, unless he's Captain Planet.
Go Planet! By your powers combined, I am Captain Planet! Captain Planet!
Truth is, in times like this, faith can either make or break a person's motivation, and it is mostly the latter, even for the most religious. After Ouyang destroyed Chu's monastery, she joined the Red Turban Rebellion, aiming to overthrow the Mongol emperor and bring the very young Prince of Radiance as China's new ruler. But in this story, the mandate is shown as some form of supernatural ability in their ability to conjure fire and light, as well as the ability to see spirits. And the famine and the terrible condition at that time caused the people to think that the emperor definitely have lost his mandate. Plus the appearance of the Prince of Radiance as well, with the very obvious mandate ability that I mentioned before, definitely caused the time of interregnum forming the Red Turban Rebellion. Now, I don't know much about Chinese history, so I'm judging the story pure on story and not factual accuracy. At first, everything was like a mystery for Chu. Like, why can she see ghosts after her brother's death? And is it because she's being haunted for stealing someone else's identity? But it is actually revealed later that this ability, this fate, has been hers all along. The Prince of Radiance noticed that spirits were following her around. So ambition is not only portrayed by Chu's desire to have it all, or Ouyang's desire for revenge. It is also for other characters, like Madame Zhang, a woman running a trade empire, puppeting her husband, and then Ma Chuoying, a person who started off as someone with no desire for herself, and then, only to succumb to her own desires at the end. Or even my second favorite character, Wang Baoxiang. Everyone just wants to have it all, So I have like a few cons with the story. Alright, so I have the problem a little bit with the pacing. It started off really nice, and then it slows down really hard in the middle. That was the point where I find it really hard to continue because I found my eyes glazing. It is thanks to my desire to see the ending that I persevered. And the other one is the battles. Now, if you're expecting some totally martial arts action-packed, you'll be disappointed, because this is written more than a character exploration than action. And Chu is portrayed as someone that is not good at martial arts or swordsmanship in that case. So since she's not good at that, she uses her intelligence to find back ends to reach her goal. And yeah, that's it. This is a war epic that focuses more on tale of identity and shaping your destiny in a world that rejects you. And Shelley Parker Chan definitely offers that through a spectrum of different characters without emphasizing who's good, who's bad, who should you follow and you shouldn't follow, because she definitely trusts the readers enough to be the judge. And the idea of the mandate itself doesn't point at whether a person is good or bad. It's like, oh, you're a good person, you should rule. No, the mandate simply just focuses on capability, and that the author offers the answer that not all rulers are good people. Since this book is part of the duology, I already can't wait for the sequel, and honestly, you guys should check it out. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.